Penanda pawb, Pam. Pam thou Bonnie and Clyde thou in o'r banciau. Why was it that Bonnie and Clyde stole from the banks? If you know, you may be wrong. The answer is far, far simpler than you think. It's because the internet hadn't been invented. Because now the money is not in the banks, it's on the internet. So what is e-crime? Let's tell you a little bit about Spamhaus first. We started 11 years ago specifically to deal with online spam. At that stage it was just a nuisance, a big nuisance. We could see what was likely to come and we got some of it right. But nowadays things have changed and spam is sent mostly by means of a criminal method. We need to do something about it. But it crosses jurisdictions and thereby hangs the big problem. We are an international body. The police are national bodies. I remind you that in most cases police officers have to get permission to investigate a crime which goes outside their immediate district, even the other side of a city. The police service is not geared up to handling international electronic crime. I have been pressing the wrong button. So I'm going to try and explain a little bit about why the police methodology isn't getting us where we need to be. That's in, of course, no criticism of the police. They can only do their job. But their job doesn't currently do what is needed to address e-crime. And now you've caught up with my screen, let's look at who we talk to. We have good relations with the majority of service providers of email, internet, and the like. We talk to the networks, the registrars, and the regulators. We obviously talk to the police, and nowadays they've started to listen. That wasn't always the case. And we talk to the research community, who are very valuable at finding out what's really going on behind a crime, but who can't talk directly because they see themselves as being at risk. We are, in many cases, talking about the Russian mafia involved in these crimes. They do not want to be seen as the source of information because, in many cases, an individual can destroy a complete criminal activity. One man. What do the criminals do when they find out who that is? They make his life uncomfortable if he has one. I should explain that a fair part of my presentation was given by Jamie before lunch. He didn't know it, of course. But the organisers found out, so they've lopped 5 minutes off my time. Sorry about that. Let's ask ourselves, what is spam? You can't investigate it without knowing what it is. And very clearly, it is electronic messages sent in bulk or by an automated mechanism which the recipient has neither requested nor authorized. That's a very careful choice of words to describe the problem we're facing. Whether the intended recipient wanted the mail is irrelevant. Whether they can opt out from it is irrelevant. You can't keep opting out from hundreds of different mailing lists. What is relevant is whether they've asked for it. Anyway, let me now take a moment and look at e-crime and see how it fits in. Let's look at what e-crime is, and with the help of the wonderful people at the back, and if you haven't been out there, I can tell you they've got a pretty impressive setup. They will now bring back a caption we had this morning and expand it so you can see it. The use of networked computers or internet technology to commit and facilitate the commission of crime. Networked computers or internet technology. That is a tremendously important point that needs to be understood both here and in the corridors of power. Because I presented at 2 conferences earlier this year, organised by Ed Gibson, who you heard from this morning, and he was telling you about them. They're for the law enforcement community. I asked that community, about 200 people, one meeting, how many of you know the use of the dig command? Now, any technical person here will know that dig is one of the most basic commands you do to find out how an internet is connecting to a domain. Of that 200 people, 12 put their hands up. I was actually quite impressed. I wasn't expecting 12. However, I found out afterwards that half of those were other speakers at the same conference. Very, very few police knew what that command did, and yet that's one of the most basic commands that a forensic investigator will use when tracking down a criminal activity online. And I did some research, and I asked, and I found that pretty well every police force in the country has got a cybercrime unit. But of the officers in the cybercrime unit, there is only one, at most, with network training, the exception being the Met, which I think has 2. Now I want to ask you a question, because this interactive system is working rather well. Is that enough? Do you feel that one officer per police force is sufficient to deal with the level of e-crime, and of course you've heard the amounts that are being involved, that are being stolen? Is one person per force enough? Let's vote now. The police service, you are the weakest link.